Are the 49ers doing enough this offseason? We'll be discussing that today on the Jack Hammer Show. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and with me today is Aaron from 49ers First Takes. How you doing, Aaron?
Doing pretty good. I've never been on your show before, so this is kind of cool. It's a little more relaxing when I'm not in charge of everything.
Yeah, that's right. The last time we did a show together was over on your channel. So
Yeah.
Today I've got to be the one worrying about the controls and what have you. But what I wanted to do is, we a lot of things going on the last couple of days. Really started yesterday. The whole discussion about going all in. That whole thing came up again yesterday when the Rams were able to land Bobby Wagner, the free agent linebacker from the Seattle Seahawks. So just wanted to start there. Let's talk a little bit about all in and how all in the Rams are and how that pertains to the 49ers and go from there. I want to get your thoughts to start off with.
I think when you grew up during the 90s, and I know a lot of people say, well, there wasn't a salary cap, and they're right, there wasn't. When the Niners did all their deal in 94, the 94-95 season. But it was cool. It was like them and Dallas were kind of punch to counter punch, you know what I mean? And it was fun to see. If you were a 49er fan, at least from, I'd say, the mid 80s up until I think 98, like when, Steve Young was coming towards the end, and the Niners would go and they'd grab like not Greg Lloyd. Who am I thinking of? They would go after the pass rusher, or they go after a guy like Rod Woodson, who was kind of later in his career. And they would make these moves that would kind of give the fans a feeling of like, all right, the Niners are once again putting all their chips in the middle of the table. They're sacrificing the future for the now. And I think a lot of 49er fans are a little bit jealous, and including myself, of how the Rams, even though they just won the Super Bowl, they have this, they kind of throw their salary cap and their draft to the wind, and just go out and make these moves that are sometimes you might deem a little bit like in access or in like not necessary moves. But with 49er fans like myself, you kind of are a little bit envious because you see the 49ers not really doing a whole hell of a lot as far as anything that really moves the needle. We got the Travarius Ward pickup, which was awesome. I think that was great. But other than that, it's really been a whole lot of just like special teams and backup position type stuff. You lose players and you bring in guys that were probably less known and maybe not as well accomplished. So as this offseason is going so far, a lot of 49er fans, including myself, are like wondering, like, do John and Kyle have a kind of a different perspective of this team than the fans do, and like think we're a lot better than we really think we are? So it is. It's a little bit. It's not as fun as it used to be, because it's like, the Niners. You hear that they're involved and you're connected to everybody, but they're never going to make any of those moves. So I know you don't win in the offseason as far as like with the moves that you make on paper, but as far as how this offseason's went so far, it has been pretty disappointing, to say the least.
Yeah, I was around. I was around during the time of the Barlow years and those, the go all in years that you're talking about with the 49ers. And 94 was the first year of the salary cap, and that happened to be the last time the 49ers won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They'd come off those two back-to-back losses to the Cowboys in the NFC Championship, and so they went, quote unquote, all in on getting everybody that they thought. The one move that they didn't make during the season, I think this is where it gets interesting when we start to look at the way the Rams are doing business, was the one that put them over the top, the 49ers over the top, was the addition of Deion Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a move that didn't happen in the offseason. That's a move that happened after the season already begun. It was a couple
That's
weeks
right.
into the season when they made that move. So that's one piece, and that kind of, I think, goes along with what the Rams have done over the last couple of years. On top of that, the one thing I would say is, I hear the all-in thing brought up a lot in terms of Eddie DeBartolo and the 49ers and how he'd be doing business with the team now. And the question that I have is, okay, well, we know that he went all in '94 and it paid off. Did it pay? Did he go all in '95? How about '96, '97, '98, '99? I mean, how all in was he? Right? Because the game changed for the 49ers in 1994 when the and Eddie DeBartolo as well when the salary cap hit. They made some moves in '94 because they were ahead of the curve on pretty much everybody else. They had to catch up a little bit to Dallas. Dallas already had a pretty darn good team at that point. But it's interesting that when you go back and you look at the teams that were involved in the 49ers going all in '94, the Cowboys and the 49ers, neither one of them has won a Super Bowl really since that very beginning of the salary cap era. The 49ers did it in '94, the Cowboys did it in '95, and neither one of them has won since. The 49ers have been back a couple of times. The Cowboys haven't been back. It's a different game now than it was back then, and I think that Eddie DeBartolo deserves a lot of credit, and there's a lot of things that he did an amazing job of. Uh, I think it would be interesting to have seen what would have transpired if he was doing it over the last 27 years and under the salary cap, because I think that limited a lot of the things that he did that made him such a good owner.
I think with the Niners nowadays, I think a lot of fans sometimes see the Niners as pretty well off talent wise, but maybe missing one or two pieces. And that's kind of my mindset. It's not necessarily go all in on every position, regardless if you need to or not. But there's a couple people in free agency that I've seen that if a lot of people say if the Niners didn't have Garoppolo's contract on the books, that they could. There's people that have contradicted that say that they could really do what they wanted and regardless of his contract. But like you see a guy like Chandler Jones, that would have been a move that I would have really been quote unquote all in on, or a Tyrann Mathieu, something like that. Not necessarily every player, but like a key piece that might be just enough to, when it all shakes out in the end of the day and we're possibly in the playoffs and we're going against the Rams, maybe that puts us over the top. And that's where I think a lot of fans are kind of like left kind of like wondering or wishing that we had a guy like Les Snead who, if he sees that that's what they need and it's only a piece or two, he's going to go make that move and worry about the repercussions later. And I understand the Niners' long game approach by trying to build a good team for a while, but it doesn't guarantee you're ever going to win a championship. So I understand kind of both sides where the Rams are like, you know what? We're worrying about right now. We're making moves for right now. We'll worry about the future in the future. And from what it's looked like so far, they still haven't paid the piper as far as all their moves and the salary cap. It just seems like they kick the can further and further down the road. So that's where the frustration comes in, because you see that they haven't really paid for it yet. And you see like the Niners approach, which is fine, drafting and re-signing your own dudes. That's great. I like that. But at the same time, you always like are a little bit envious because the Rams just don't give a damn. I mean, their GM had a shirt at their parade or something that said like "F the picks" or something. So if he doesn't care about them, why do the Niners value those early round picks that are not always guaranteed to hit so much? I don't know. It's a lot of good talk in the offseason, but it's I don't know. When you haven't won a Super Bowl in almost 30 years, you get a little jealous, I guess.
Yeah, I would say, to the people that talk about the need to have early round draft picks and how the Rams don't seem to care about them. The only thing I'm going to point to real quick there is the 49ers just made a move last year they used 3 first round picks
Right.
on one guy. That guy hasn't hit the field yet. We're going to get into that a little bit. But that's where the difference lies between the 49ers and the Rams, right? The F them picks thing is cool. the difference between the 49ers and the Rams was the Rams had a quarterback who could win games on his own. The Rams have been really good in the last 5 years under Sean McVay, in part because he's had his quarterback be healthy throughout the entire time. He chose a better quarterback, he had a healthy quarterback. Jared Goff and Jimmy Garoppolo probably aren't that far apart from each other, but the difference between Jared Goff and Jimmy Garoppolo is that Goff was always healthy, and Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been. And when we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo healthy in 2019 and 2021, the 49ers were in a Super Bowl one year and within a couple of plays of being in it the second time. Obviously, it was the Rams who were better. But that kind of shows you, like, even in 2020, when the 49ers were dealing with a ton of injuries, I feel like if they had a quarterback, they would have been in the playoffs that year as well, if Garoppolo was healthy. And we're gonna talk a little bit about the position groups themselves. The one thing I'll say about the Rams being all in is the Rams started last year 7-2. When you talk to people about the Rams and what the Rams did last year, the names that they bring up are Odell Beckham Jr., Von Miller. Those are the names, right? Okay. They were 7-2 last year. The Rams were 7-2 in the regular season before Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. played a down for them. They were already 7-2. Those were in-season trades. Now, if you want to talk about a similar situation, you go back to 2019. The 49ers were around 7-1, whatever they were, 7-0, 8-0, and they made it. They felt like they needed to add a piece to improve their offense, and they went out and they made the move to go get a wide receiver that, if the quarterback had just thrown the ball accurately, would have got them over the top.
Yep.
And so when we look at the reason why the Rams won a Super Bowl with and the 49ers haven't, I think it's pretty easy I think I'm leading you in a direction that shows that it's the quarterback. When you look at the Rams' moves last year, the biggest move that helped them get to the Super Bowl, because if you take a step back, when the Rams played Arizona in the wild card round, Arizona was a shell of what they were early in the season when they beat the Rams. They had fallen apart by that point. Rams win that game. The Rams had already shown the ability to beat Tampa Bay earlier in the season. They'd already beat them once without those guys, right? Without any changes to their roster. The one team that they couldn't beat was the 49ers. The one big move that they made that allowed them to get over the 49ers, because remember, they lost to the 49ers with Odell Beckham and Von Miller in week 18. The move that got the Rams over the top was actually a guy that they signed off the street after week 18 going into the wildcard game, and that's Eric Weddle. Eric Weddle was the piece on the Rams defense that caused the 49ers offense the biggest problems in the NFC Championship game, because his ability to come up and fill the run gaps in the run shut the 49ers running game down for the most part. And the Rams basically said, we're going to shut you down here, and we're going to make you beat us with your quarterback. And we believe our quarterback is better than yours, and that's how we're going to win. And it played out that way. So it's interesting. I understand. I get the feeling from fans. When you're watching other teams add pieces and your team isn't adding big name pieces, there's a sense of FOMO that I think comes into play, because you're seeing this team's getting so much better here. And when you take a step back, the addition of Allen Robinson is a good signing for the Rams. The addition of the linebacker that they signed yesterday, Bobby Wagner, that's a good signing for him. He's better than Bobby Wagner is better than Troy Reader. There's no doubt about that, right? The wide receiver thing, you're going to be without Odell Beckham in the beginning of the season, so it's kind of a wash there. I have a hard time saying that Allen Robinson is better than Odell Beckham, but he kind of gives them that same type of a player. I'm talking for a long time here, but I feel like the Rams, when you take a step back and you look at what they've lost compared to what they've gained, they've lost quite a bit, and I don't know if their additions completely make up for everything that they've lost so far.
I think When you let somebody else kind of go with it and talk about it, you can. I mean, like, see, I've already calmed down about how I was feeling. I mean, and I think the Niners roster, if you looked at the roster as a whole, I think it's better than the Rams. The Rams have, kind of, you can say maybe Hall of Famers at a couple of positions that are one day going to be in the Hall of Fame, like no doubt. I, it's just I think the Niners have a lot more pressure. The fact that they really have to hit in the draft every year to kind of keep this ship going, and I think with the Rams sometimes they don't want to put that pressure on themselves, so they kind of go for somebody that's been proven. It's it could all change this year. You're right. The quarterback is totally responsible for what the Rams did to get over the top. He was the reason. I mean, he was. Say what you want about him in Detroit and how he never did anything, and he was the same player. And Ward said that about him, Jimmy Ward, which he ended up being wrong. If Trey is what we think he's going to be, he covers up a lot of warts that this team might have if they are, quote unquote, not as good as the Rams in certain positions. Maybe they don't have another edge rusher to help Nick Bosa, or they're missing, another playmaker on offense. They have that quarterback that if he is as good as we think he's going to be, he might be able to kind of uplift and bring us kind of along, which is something that Jimmy could never do. Jimmy was more or less a guy that if everything was going really well around him, he was the guy that for the most part wouldn't mess it up. He was kind of like the cruise ship, the guy who runs the cruise ship, pretty much he just has to stay on course and he's fine. Mm-hmm. Whereas, with Stafford, he was the difference. He was what he did with that offense that Jared Goff he pretty much played with the prior couple of years. It was just unbelievable. It was a different team, especially in the playoffs. Now you can say what you want about his interceptions or whatever, but the Niners got no pressure on him in that NFC Championship game, and he absolutely carved us apart, especially on third down. So, yeah, you're right. The quarterback, if the Niners get what they think they're going to get out of Trey Lance, then maybe people like me who have YouTube channels who think they know stuff will be proven wrong that you don't always need to friggin' spend and blow all your wad, so to speak, on getting all the best players in free agency. So you're right. We're not patient. I'm not patient. Guys like Niner Nick on Twitter, he's animated like me, but to a different level. So maybe we're all gonna be proven wrong. And you're right. You kind of take the more of like, I'm going to look at this from an approach of not someone who's so diehard fanish. And if we get what we think we're going to get with the quarterback, then you're right. We might be on our way to something special.
Yeah, and I know that's a lot of pressure to put on a guy who's entering the second year of his career. That's life in the NFL, man.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not. I pause to say that, because I don't want to compare him to Patrick Mahomes, but I'm going to anyway. I mean, Mahomes is the guy who didn't start. He had one start in his first year, and he came out and led the Chiefs to an AFC Championship game and got Tom Brady'd right at the end of there. I think there's some possibility for the 49ers to be okay at that position. And I think we just need to let this thing play out. It's the whole Garoppolo still being around thing is throws a monkey wrench into that discussion a little bit. But let's go through what I was hoping to do before we get started, before we move any further. I just want to shout out a couple folks really quick. We got Alan in the house. He says, Jack and Aaron, happy Friday. How's it going? It's Friday, man. You can't be upset about Friday afternoon at 4:00 out here on the West Coast, and Aaron's at 7:00. He's already off. He's already having a good time.
If I actually drank, dude, I would be like 3 sheets to the wind already.
There you go. See? And then we have Harold says, hello, everybody. Hey, Harold, how you doing? We got Dirk in here. Dirk's a good guy. Dirk is actually a good friend of Rob, the left shoe, the big shoe, who I'm going to miss my opportunity to chat with him this afternoon. We'll get back to that on Monday. But, let's get into this. Let's go. We've had a lot of people talking about better or worse, and there kind of seems to be, it usually kind of seems to be a little bit scattershot. You take a look at this position, that position, or whatever. There's some things there. So let's go ahead and just kind of go through better or worse each position. We're not going to do each position individually. We're going to do each position group. So we're going to do offensive line and so on and so forth. So when we look at the offensive line, when you look at this offensive line, better or worse in your mind?
It's got to be worse, just because, regardless of what you think about Lincoln and how much you would have paid him. You've said this. I've seen other content creators say you just don't overpay for a guard, and I get that. He did very well. He stayed very healthy, which is something the Niners seem to have an allergic reaction to, is staying healthy. But you just don't overpay in that position. But the fact that they got a rookie that's possibly going to replace him, who couldn't even get on the field last year, was a second rounder, it's a little concerning. And then you look across the rest of the line. I mean, you got an aging center who I think is coming back. The right guard and the right tackle. I mean, right guard has been a problem for years. I mean, it was a problem in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. And then you have right tackle with McGlinchey coming off of a quad injury for a tackle offensive lineman who has to have explosion come up through his body, constantly, to have a problem as serious as a quad injury. Yeah, they're definitely worse. But I mean, even with Lakin, they were still going to be suspect from center on. So yeah, I'd say worse.
Yeah, okay, and I'm going to agree with you. I will say that right now, that I'll say that the offensive line, for the sake of this argument, the offensive line is worse. I guess you could say they're maybe going to be the same, whatever.
Right.
I think the part of the issue here when we go through this, when you're looking at are they better or worse, is we haven't seen Aaron Banks on the field. Right. The only people that have seen what Aaron Banks is capable of doing is the 49ers players and coaching staff, because as I've said a few times now since the offseason started, the folks like myself and the other people that are in the media that are at practices during the season, we don't really get to watch the offense. We don't see the offensive line practice like we do during training camp. During training camp, we get to actually watch practice, watch them, through team drills and all those kind of things. And that's even after the public is no longer showing up. And so we were able to watch them all the way up through training camp and until the 53-man roster was announced and all that kind of stuff. And we didn't see much of Aaron Banks, right? Because he got hurt against Kansas City. So there's a lot of growth that's happened between then and now. And so if you want to take the word of the team, then they feel pretty strong about Aaron Banks and what he can bring. That's what they shared. That's what Shanahan shared. So if Aaron Banks is the guy that I saw on film or somewhat close to that, the Flyers are going to be fine at left guard. The Mike McGlinchey thing is a little bit more of a question mark because of like you said, the quad. Again, that's a position where I think that if McGlinchey, they didn't come out directly and say this, I think the question was more geared towards like the right guard position. But if Mike McGlinchey is not able to go, I would bet that you're going to see a competition that involves Jalen Moore to be the starter there. And Jalen Moore is another guy that they really like. And they just there needs to be some development there, and he needs to be playing more. So for me, yes, it's a negative or a worse, but I think there's a potential for it to be the same. I don't know if I'd say better. The one thing that I will say, though, is I continue to hear about how the younger guys could cause problems for the 49ers quarterbacks, and that, go back to 2020 and that comment that I made earlier about the 49ers could have made the playoffs that year if they had their quarterback healthy. And the response that you get back is, or at least the one that I've heard, is but the quarterbacks were getting hurt because the offensive line was having problems. I think it's important to take a step back. And I think it's important to realize that in 2020, when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, the guy that missed his block was Lakin Tomlinson. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't Daniel Brunskill. It wasn't any of the other guys over on the right side of the line of scrimmage. It was Lakin Tomlinson. When Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt in the playoffs, This year against Dallas, the guy that missed his block was Lake and Tomlinson. When Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt against Tennessee, the guy that missed his block that night was George Kittle. So one of those guys is no longer on the team. And the other guy is somebody who the 49ers and many around the NFL believe is one of the best tight ends in the league. So I think there needs to just be some context around that discussion when you start to talk about the injury to the quarterback position and what's happened in the past. Laken Tomlinson, his best asset was the fact that he was healthy 99% of the time. He was a very good run blocker. Pass blocking was not his best suit. I think that most people, if they sat down and had a discussion about it, would agree that that's the case.
And you have that perspective, which and that mindset where you can kind of, fans always have the goggles on of, being a fan and seeing things not maybe as clearly as people who can take a step back, especially if they follow the game and have, to have to write about it or, talk about it in some form or fashion. He came, I forgot Laken Tomlinson, what they traded him for, but it wasn't like he wasn't like the second coming of Trent Williams when they got him from the Lions. So
I think it was a 7th rounder. I think.
Yeah, I think with the Niners, a lot of fans just enjoyed the fact that he was healthy all the time, but maybe a lot of us, including myself, overvalued how really talented he really was. So high hope. I mean, one thing when I talked to Larry Krueger, the one thing he was a little confused by is he said that Aaron Banks had like slow feet. And for the type of running game that the Niners kind of run, his body and his feet don't really match the type of stuff that they want to do. So I guess if they're working on his feet in the offseason, trying to get him, I don't know if you can do anything about that. But and I know they say his body's being transformed as well, because he looked pretty soft when they brought him in last year. He didn't look, for as big as he was, he didn't look imposing. So maybe getting off that college meal plan and getting into the NFL with the nutritionist and a weight room, maybe that'll do him some because come on, what do you eat in college? Ramen noodles, pizza, Chinese food, like that's it, dude. And I would have nothing wrong with that if I was an offensive lineman, but dude, when you get into the NFL, bro, it's like a totally different game. And I'm optimistic that he's going to be good. It's just it is worrisome with Trey as your quarterback because Trey's the future, man. And you don't want to get him hurt. I think maybe the Niners say, like, hey, he's a lot more mobile and he can move outside the pocket. And if the offensive line struggles a little bit, we have a little bit of an insurance with his feet. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I will say this. Larry's not wrong. Because that was something that I heard more than once while I was walking around the practice field, especially watching the offensive linemen, were them talking about his steps and his footwork and just it's so minute, the things that they need to do. I wouldn't say that it was an issue necessarily that he doesn't have the quickness, but there were definitely some footwork issues that he was dealing with last year early on in camp when he first joined the 49ers. And that kind of goes to, a lot of things. I know that there was the overriding thought was that he was brought in to start for the 49ers right away and move on from Daniel Brunskill at right guard. I don't have anything to prove this, but maybe the process that they were going through with Aaron Banks was similar to what they were doing with Trey Lance. They were getting him in early, getting him ready. Everything it seemed like in that draft class of 2022 or 2021 was for them to contribute in 2022. It just kind of felt that way. And there's reasons behind that. The 49ers, we're going to move on to the wide receivers, but I think it's important to realize like the 49ers they have a lot of money wrapped up in 5 guys, and it's going to grow. It's going to become 7 by, in the next 2 years. They're paying Trent Williams top of the market money. They're paying George Kittle top of the market, even though, that those numbers haven't quite hit yet, but those are guys who are their top players, right? George Kittle, mm-hmm. Trent Williams, and so on. And so that's why you make the moves and you start to try to kind of supplement through the draft. And offensive line is a position that you should be able to do that with. And the 49ers have always been about kind of having their number for each position. I'm talking about this current regime of 49ers. So there we go there. There's the offensive line. So we both agree that they're worse, and a lot of that has to do with, at least like I said, in my feeling, it has to do with just because we haven't seen it yet. Maybe they're not going to be worse when they actually hit the field.
Right.
Better or worse, wide receivers. And you can go in the middle if you don't feel it's one or the other.
I'm kind of in the middle because I feel like at the top we're good, right? We got Debo, we got Ayuk, but we don't really have much guaranteed behind them. I mean, we brought in Ray McLeod, who's more of a returner, but I guess he was used somewhat regularly, like not like super regularly, but he was used somewhat in the Steelers offense. Little bit of a gadget guy, which, the Niners are real good with their gadgety plays. But still don't understand what's going on with Juwan Jennings. And after that, it's pretty much nobody knows. Trent Sherfield went to Miami. That's my brother's squad, by the way. They're looking pretty good right now. I hope they do well next year, except for when they play us. Yeah, it's a little bit of a in the middle. Like what's going to happen? Are we going to hit somebody in the draft? Are we letting things kind of trickle down in free agency, and we're going to bring somebody in if there's anybody even available anymore? It's a little bit alarming that they're like top heavy and then nothing. So,
yeah, I think that on that's one where I could say, I don't know if we'd say they're better or worse. I don't think they are better or worse, right? I think that's one where they're the same. As they stand right now, they didn't really, and the reason I say it is because they didn't really get anything out of Trent Sherfield as a receiver. I mean, he had the one catch against Detroit, but that's, Brandon, you can or Debo Samuel, any of those receivers can run that route and do what he did for that touchdown there. So I think they're about the same at the wide receiver position. Debo Samuel, I think, is one of the top 3 guys in the NFL. Brandon Ayuk has the ability to take off, I think, under Kyle Shanahan's offense with Trey Lance there. I think that combination, that ball coming down the field more often plays to Brandon Ayuk's strengths. Juwan Jennings, we saw him kind of come into his own. So you have a really good threesome right there. You mentioned Ray McLeod. I think we're going to see at least one draft pick coming and being added into that group as well.
That would be, I mean, I would, if you were to think of a draft pick, is there any chance in God's green earth that the Niners would trade up for a guy like Christian Watson, or is that just I just don't think they have enough firepower unless they use picks from next year that they're supposedly being rewarded. I mean, I feel like they shouldn't possibly, because I don't think that's a position of need, so to speak. But my God, if that was the case, I didn't follow combine or a lot of that stuff this year. So, but wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. But everything kind of points to the wide receiver group in the draft being pretty deep. I think the 49ers can get a receiver with either their second or one of their third round picks that's going to be a good addition for that group. That's just my gut feeling based off of the speed and the different things that the guys that position brings. It's a really deep position in this year's draft. I think they have the ability to add somebody there that would fill in some needs for them.
Makes sense.
So I would look at the Christian Watson. Everybody wants Christian Watson because they know about him from Trey Lance, but there's a lot of other good wide receivers out there as well.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind getting Christian Watson. The guy's a big guy that can do a lot of things down for many years that the 49ers need. So that would be a nice pickup for them if he kind of falls to him. What about tight end? Do you think tight end is better, worse, or the same?
It seems like it's the same. You got Kittle at the top, of course, and then you have Dwelly and Warner, who both did nothing last year. I mean, at all. Like, there was no production behind Kittle. So I wouldn't mind them with a mid-round pick, like addressing tight end, and say the 5th or 6th, even if it's a guy who does just one thing well, like catch the ball. I know the Niners are big on blocking tight ends, but it'd be nice to have another tight end who could, run routes and catch to help Kittle, because I feel like Kittle is so zeroed in on every game. But yeah, I feel like they're the same. I would love to see something happen there. I know Kyle Shanahan's a big fan of two tight ends and just hasn't had had it transpire yet. He had the what's his name during 2020, and that was a disaster because he got hurt. What's his name? You know what I'm talking about. He ran into the wall in the Giant Stadium and hurt his ankle. He played for the Redskins. I forget his name. Anyways, point being, Kyle has flirted with it. Yes. He's flirted with it and wanted to do it. And
he's played around
hopefully
with it.
It's still.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I can't think of his name.
Justin Reed or something Reed, or I forget his name.
Yeah, something. It was Reed.
Jordan Reed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Jordan Reed. Yeah, see, the 49ers don't really need a guy like Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed was awful. Jordan Reed had some plays, and he could do some things every once in a while, but he really wasn't very good. The 49ers were better off with a guy like Ross Dwelley than they were with Jordan Reed. And the issue with, I really like Ross Dwelley. I know it's kind of a punchline because of the way that some folks talk about him, but I think that Ross Dwelley is a good tight end. He has really good hands. He just doesn't have the playmaking ability of a George Kittle, the run after the catch ability, right? But I agree. I think the tight ends are the same. I mean, the room is the same all the way through. Right now they have Kittle, Dwelley, Werner, Tanner Hudson, and Jordan Matthews. All five of the guys that were in their tight end room last year are all on their roster right now. And they could possibly add to that position, bring somebody else in to compete with Dwelley or Werner for one of those spots. I could see, because right now Dwelley just kind of keeps coming back on one-year deals. It would be interesting to kind of see what they do, because do they maybe go with four tight ends instead of? Do we see this team change? I think is part of it. I guess is where I'm going. Do we see a full do we see the way that they kind of deployed their offense change? Are they using more two tight ends than they've done in the past? Are they using kind of getting to be a little bit? Are they going to try to be a little bit of a mixture of not being in a, Kyle Juszczyk's got to be a piece of this offense, but maybe they're using a tight end like Dwelley or Matthews or Hudson or something like that as an extra receiver that's out there. I mean, Matthews we know is a receiver that put on some weight and kind of is in between. Maybe that's the kind of direction that they go. I don't know. That'll be something to keep an eye on as they go through.
It'd be interesting to see if they could become more multiple in their looks on offense, like not be so kind of, because the Niners are pretty. You can kind of peg them for what they like to do. They're pretty. I mean, Kyle pretty much runs things anyways, regardless if teams try to stop them or not, because he, most of the time he is the smartest guy in the room. But yeah, I would be all for them trying to change things up and be more multiple in the stuff that they show, because then it just makes it harder for the defense,
Yeah, no, totally, it does, and that's kind of something that they need to do as they move forward with Trey Lance. I think is kind of adjust their game a little bit. I think we saw Kyle Juszczyk move into more of he was a fullback, but they also used him kind of in a tight end role at times last year, a little bit more maybe than we'd seen in the past. So there was definitely some change ups that I think are geared towards what we're going to see this year with Trey Lance under center. It's funny because we got Lee here, and he's talking exactly what I'm saying is that Kyle Juszczyk is a really good player that needs to get the ball in his hands more often.
Mm-hmm, for the amount of money they pay him, especially.
I really think that the guy should be their tight end too. Right. Even when they're in their 22 personnel, it's like they have two tight ends on the field. They can get him the ball. And if you go back and you watch as much film as I did of Trey Lance when he was at North Dakota State, the one thing that we know is that he likes to throw to his tight ends and fullbacks. He'll throw the ball down the field as well at times, but he really liked to work those underneath routes off of play action and stuff in the tight ends and fullbacks got worked quite a bit. So that could be a piece of the puzzle here that as we move forward. And that's a good transition into the running backs. Again, we talked about the tight end. That's the same, it's the same running back room. I think if we look at the running backs, we're in the same boat too, right? The running back room was probably about the same as last year.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that they're worse only with the potential, of what they could have been with Raheem Mostert, the speed factor, and just the, how you have like almost like a thunder and lightning type of approach with Elijah Mitchell and Raheem. But yeah, I would say they're the same because we never saw Raheem Mostert last year. He was hurt like within the first game, I think. So yeah, they're the same. I would love to see them get somebody with a little bit more, a little bit more juice in his step, a quicker guy, whether he's undrafted. I have total confidence that even with Bobby Turner taking a step back, you wonder if they're in communication with him still. Maybe he's doing stuff from his home or whatever. But I just have a lot of confidence that my brother even too is a Dolphins fan. He's like, you guys find running backs everywhere. So I'm not extremely worried about the running back position because I feel like Kyle and the staff have just an ability to find people that you never would expect, and then they end up being like 6th rounder, and you got Elijah Mitchell. I mean, that's when I say it's stupid, I mean that in a complimentary way. It's just stupid. Like, really? He was so good. I think they overused him last year. I would like to see more people touch the ball, but I think it might have been Larry again who I talked to. He says when Kyle falls in love with certain players who are successful, he uses them. And maybe sometimes he overuses them, like Debo and him. But yeah, I think they're the same, but I would love to see if they could add, I don't know, a little bit more speed to the group just to counter what, Elijah Mitchell and what's his name that they drafted who didn't play last year.
Yeah, Trey Sermon
are. They're just a little, they're not as quick as, say, a Raheem Mostert. I don't think anybody's as quick as Raheem Mostert, but it'll be interesting to see.
Well, the guy that's as quick as Raheem Mostert is Deebo Samuel. That's right.
It's true.
So that's it's funny
that use him.
Yeah, it was fun to hear you say thunder and lightning because that was kind of the term that I kept they kept popping into my head, and I kept putting that in my game stories at different times because that's what they were. They were the thunder and lightning. You had the guy that was just kind of pounding away in blanking on his name right now, Mitchell. And then you had the guy that was taking it to the house in Deebo Samuel. And I think that is a big miss. It is something that they need. And I feel like right now, the reason I say the running back room is the same is because it is.
Literally. It literally is.
It's just like the tight end room. It's literally the same.
Right.
And like you said, Raheem Mostert I think he played 2 plays last year. Might have been 3, but I think he ran the ball twice and he was done for the year. So just think of what that team could have been. So that's the thing here. So here's the thing: is we're not even talking about draft picks at all. So we're just basing it off of where they are at this moment without the draft. But I think that's another position that they need to look at in the draft is they need to find a running back or look for a running back that has some breakaway ability. Although I like Trey Sermon, I don't see him as a home run hitter in the NFL yet, based off what we've seen so far.
Yeah, and then they also brought about Jeff Wilson Jr. as well, who's kind of a bruiser. He kind of likes contact. He didn't look great last year. I think that knee affected him. He didn't quite look like himself from like say 2019. So they're loaded, but they could always use more. As it showed last year, they never have enough running backs on this team.
Sure, yeah, and Jeff Wilson Jr. his biggest role for the team over the second half of the year when he came back, he ran the ball a little bit, but really the role they used him in was he was the fullback when Debo would get into the backfield. So when they go into like 11 personnel with Debo Samuel lined up in the backfield, a lot of times it would start with Jeff Wilson Jr. being in the backfield, and then they'd slide him back or something like that, right? If you go back and you really kind of look at the film, Jeff Wilson Jr. was more in the fullback role in that, but they were getting into it in different ways. It was the way that they deployed their personnel made it look like they were in 11 or whatever, but it was really him and Debo were the 2 running backs on the field, but one of them the wide receiver, so it makes it hard to count for.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Same. And definitely the same.
It is. It's so crazy. But this next one we're going to jump into, I don't think we're going to be able to say they're the same. It's going to be a better or worse scenario. And that's the defensive line. What do you think? Well, because the losses there were Kentavious Street and DJ Jones.
Oh, I mean, I would say worse only because I feel like DJ offered he was good in both against the run and the pass. I mean, he could rush the passer even in his stout little body that he has, stout little fat guy. But Contavious Street got washed in the run game quite a bit. So to me, that's not really big. That's not really as big of a miss. I guess it all depends on what we get from our number, our number 13 pick from 2020, Javon
Yes.
Kinlaw. That's going to really determine if we've gotten worse or better. Right now, I would say we were worse just because I think who we brought in to replace DJ Jones is not quite the same level caliber player. Just from a quick look at him, but I could be wrong. It's hard. I mean, they're really deep. They got Charles Omenihu. They brought back. They're bringing back Jordan Willis. They brought back Kerry Hyder. So they're deep, but a lot of those guys kind of all do the same thing. So it'd be interesting to see. If they address edge in the draft and it's a huge hit, then all of a sudden, you ask me this in 6 months, I could say, oh, way better. But if you had to ask me right now at this point in time, April 1st, 2022, I'd say they're worse. Just because who they brought in to replace DJ Jones, I don't think is as good. That's it.
Okay. When you say that, are you thinking that they brought in Hassan Ridgeway to replace him? Is that why?
I mean, it looked like a move for move type of thing. I mean, you probably have more insight on that, but it just looked like they replaced DJ Jones with a cheaper option. But I could be wrong.
No, that's okay. I think that as I look at the way that the team's constructed, the question that I have on the defensive line is Eric Armstead. Are they going to continue to use Eric Armstead as a defensive tackle? Because if that's the case, then it kind of clarifies where everybody's going to fall.
Okay.
If he's going to be an interior defensive lineman, then that means that you're going to have the guy that's replacing DJ Jones is actually Javon Kinlaw, right?
Right.
And then the guy that Hassan Ridgeway is replacing becomes Contavious Street.
Okay.
And then the guy that replaces Arden Key is Charles Omenihu. Then you also have Jordan Willis and Kerry Hyder, who are Willis is an outside rusher. I don't remember seeing Willis really be used on the interior in the pass rush. He was usually coming off the edge. Kerry Hyder is a guy who can play inside or outside, but has been very at his best for the 49ers. He was on the outside. So when I look at this one, I think they're going to be a better pass rushing team.
Okay.
Javon Kinlaw, he struggled a lot at times during his rookie season. If you base it off of what Pro Football Reference tells you as far as the total pressures, he was at 10, which is more than what the 49ers got at DJ Jones last year, which was 6. When you compare the number of snaps that they played, because and then when I say that, I'm saying Javon Kinlaw in 2020 compared to 2021's DJ Jones from a pass rush perspective. And the reason I'm comparing those is because the snaps is almost the same. It's like 550 something to 546 or something like that. It's pretty close. So you're right. It comes down to Javon Kinlaw. Is Javon Kinlaw fully healthy and ready to go and ready to be explosive like he said and all those kind of things? If he is, then I think they're going to be better overall. They're going to be better in the pass rush, but I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back in the run defense. That's how I see them on the. So it's kind of for me, I'm going to say it's the same because I can't really say that they're better. I don't think they're worse. I think they're kind of the same and a little bit worse here, but a little bit better here. So it kind of averages out to the delta. Same.
What was your opinion on the loss of Kerry Hyder? Is it a wash by bringing in not Kerry Hyder, Arden Key? Is it a wash by bringing in Kerry Hyder to replace him? Is it pretty much the same production, or do you think one was better than the other?
Well, Key's a guy who he kind of exploded once they moved him inside. And I believe that the move that they made last year to trade for Charles Omenihu from Houston was to get themselves ready for another interior pass rusher, because that's where Amenahu, although he's listed as a defensive end, when you go back and watch where Amenahu is rushing from when he was in Houston, he was always an interior. He was almost always an interior pass rusher, so he was usually rushing in the inside. And then you have Kerry Hyder, who can do both. I think Hyder's more of a backup on the edge, and I think Amenahu's going to be more of an interior pass rusher. So that's why I think Amenahu replaces Key. And I think it helps out a lot when you have guys like Eric Armstead and Nick Bosa lined up around you, because you got to remember, I mean, Arden Key had, I think, 4.5 sacks in 3 years before last season.
Right.
So they're taking a little bit of a gamble on Amenahu, but he also he kind of came on over the second half of the season. He had that one good game in the playoffs, and it'll be interesting. He might be the one that you're talking about. There's the question marks there are Kinlaw and Amenahu, I think, are probably your biggest ones. Eric Armstead's a question because is he an inside guy or an outside, kind of doing that shifting kind of thing that they do with him. For me, I think Eric Armstead's at his best when they just play him inside, let him stay there at one spot instead of going back and forth. They have the depth to handle the edge with Samson Ebukam.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about Ebukam. And you're right. When you break it down the way you just did, and you kind of say who replaces who and who kind of takes on the role of, said departed guy, it makes me almost say that they're somewhat same, or if not better, just because you have a little bit more insight on that than I do. Because I'm a fan. It's recency bias. You see what you see from the previous season, and you say this guy's better. But if you go actually take yourself out of a fan's head and put yourself into a person who follows a team and has to break things down, you kind of see things for what they really are. So I'm taking your word for it. You have a way of like making me like rethink what I think about things, because you're able to kind of take the fan perspective out of it. So interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of the way that I'm seeing it come together. I don't have any insight that you don't have in terms of. It's not like there's a person that's in the organization that I'm basing this off of. It's just based off of observation, kind of seeing the way that they're doing things. So I just want to be, the next one. Let's jump over to linebacker again. It's funny as you go through this because there's really not a whole lot of change, right? I mean, the linebacker group is the same linebacker group they had last year. I mean, they've got the best. I mean, I'll kind of just run first here. You've already got the best middle linebacker in the game.
Yep.
You have Azeez Al-Shaair, who, by all accounts, had a big improvement last year when he got to play, because he was playing so much in place of Dre Greenlaw, who is coming back. They have Dre Greenlaw right now under contract, and they might, who knows? I know he's somebody who fans have talked about could be a trade piece on the road, but Greenlaw, he might be that piece. And then you have who else do you have?
Flanagan Falls.
Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, who, he's a pretty good player as well. And then on top of that, you have, didn't they bring in a linebacker? Yes, they did. Oren Burks.
Burks, yep.
Who they added. So that's kind of your five. I would say that from a linebacker's perspective, not talking about what Burks does on special teams, but from a linebacker perspective, they're probably pretty similar.
Yeah, I think that they're similar, but they're really damn good.
Yeah.
I really hope they keep Dre Greenlaw. Why take away from a position of strength unless you think you can really, get something for him picks wise, or if you swap him for another, kind of middle of the road player at a different position from another team in a trade. I hate when like teams think they're good in a position and then they end up moving on from somebody, and then that year coming they have a bunch of injuries and have been like, man, if they just would have kept Dre Greenlaw. So. Because I was like that when that linebacker we traded to Denver last year, I forget his name. He was having a really good camp and a really good preseason, and then the Niners ended up. Azeez Al-Shaair came on. I forget his name. So, yeah, I think that they're really damn good. So I'm cool with things are the way that they are, but you never know. I mean, there's always the draft. There might be some other draft in the 6th round.
Yeah, we're basing that off of where they are at this moment. Yes, the draft is going to come up, and that's going to affect their depth pieces a little bit, and so. But I think right now they're in a pretty good spot. If you do move off of Dre
Yep.
Greenlaw, that means that if you move off of Dre Greenlaw, it's because you really believe that a guy like Oren Burks or Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles gives you the ability to not drop off at the linebacker spot.
Right.
Not that I know. I don't even. I've never really been in that boat. I don't think Greenlaw. I think it's a little bit more love from 49er fans than what he actually brings to the table because of the one play that he made up in Seattle, which was a great
Yep.
play. So I'm not taking anything, making it like that wasn't a great play, but that was just one play out of 1,000 plays that he's had to go out for during his time with the 49ers.
You're looking at things more from a down and down out perspective instead of do you see what he did against Russell that one time when he intercepted him or when he, saved the season? Yeah, I definitely think that I thought Aziz played better than him when he was in there. And I also, the guy that we talked about was Jonas Griffith. I wouldn't have mind keeping him, but who knows?
Yes.
Oren Burks, from what a lot of people were saying, he was actually pretty good when he played on defense in Green Bay. They showed some plays of him. He was a quick sideline to sideline guy you could make tackles. So, and if he's not your starter and that's your backup, then great. And he could also play special teams. So, we're not in the building every day. I'm not in the building every day. So a lot of us fans think we know stuff. We really don't know anything. So I'm saying they're the same, and I hope they really don't move on from Greenlaw because I think he's great depth. But if you can get something for him and you can bring something in that is equal or better at a different position or a draft pick, then do it, I guess.
I like the I guess part at the end of that one because that's
right. Because then it doesn't leave me guilty if they bring somebody in and he sucks. They're like, Aaron, you said that. I'm like, so I always leave it open for
I also said
little wiggle room.
I give myself an out by saying I guess. I
guess.
Right? Yeah. No, you're fine. And then real quick, this goes back to our discussion on the defensive line, and it's from Jay Aguayo, 56. Thank you, Jay. He says that Jack Kinlaw is the X factor. I think we should get the best edge rushers in the second round. We need to put enough pressure to help Bosa get one-on-one matchups.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that edge rusher is something that they might go there at the top, at the end of round 2 with their first pick. It's just kind of depending on where the board falls. Edge rusher is definitely in play for the 49ers. The other thing I will say, though, too, on that is that Samson Ebukam played pretty good in the second half of the year. He's a guy who had been going back and forth. He'd been kind of doing the Eric Armstead thing, right? Inside, outside. But instead of doing it inside, outside, he'd been going from a linebacker to a pass rusher. And then last year he was able to focus just on playing defensive end and rushing the passer and what it takes to kind of be that defensive end role. And he came around pretty good down the second half of the season. And if they can get a little bit tighter coverage in the secondary, then I think they're going to be just fine.
Totally agree. Yeah, I thought he played well in the later part of the year. A lot of people were saying, he was playing a position that he wasn't necessarily not comfortable with, but he played a lot of outside linebacker as opposed to a 4-3 defensive end rusher. So it'll be interesting to see him with another offseason, with Coach Chris Kasurek, who I think is an absolute madman, but I don't know, man. Like, you say what you want about these coaches, but like, you bring a guy in who ain't done diddly poo on another team, and then he comes in and he has like 8-10 sacks. So I'm on the Chris Kasurek train. I'm on the D'Amico Ryans train. I was a little iffy on both of them last year at certain points of the year, but yeah, he's that if they can get another edge rusher, you're right. I mean, that'd be pretty solid, man. And then you're right. If you get stickier on the backside, I mean, that's what man. I'm already ready for football season right now. When I start talking about this stuff, I start like zoning out and thinking about the season. But yeah, that would be nice. Hopefully they do that.
You got to slow down a little bit. We're still 4 months away from training camp.
I know. I was so burnt out at the end of the season. I was just like, I'm going to stop doing YouTube for a while. And then I'm like, oh yeah, free agency and the draft's coming up. What am I doing?
I was not burned out, but I want to see another game because it's a lot more fun to talk about games and talk about hypotheticals because this is the time of the year. Right now, this is where I struggle a little bit because this is the time of the year where you can pretty much say any wild thing that you want to say, and you can have like a little crumb that backs you up, and then and you utilize that, and or whatever. That's where I struggle with the off season. Plus, sometimes here's the thing for me is like I'm not. I guess I need to like maybe change the approach that I take and just kind of become more of a negative Nancy, and just kind of just start ripping on people all the time, regardless of whether there's any kind of truth or real reality behind it. I think that might be what I need to do moving forward.
The one thing too is like my nephews and I understand he's kind of I wouldn't say we're negative. We're just like a little bit like hard to please. We always talk about how the off season and the draft is when we have all the hope, and then the season starts. Like the 2020 season and all the seasons prior to 2019. My nephew always said we have hope in April and May and March and all those months, and then the season starts. So right now everybody's making great moves and everybody's going to be really good, and everybody's had the best. You get those draft shows after on ESPN, and everybody gets the awesomely graded draft, and everybody's like so good. And then the season hits, and it's like, wow, that was way off. So yeah, right now, like once the draft hits and the draft's over, and like everybody's healthy before training camp, the optimism could shoot through the roof, and I might be a lot more positive than I am right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, the season starts. Yeah, well, and this is the
season starts.
They just had the good year, so if we go based off of their history,
we're gonna be bad next year.
we're gonna have a long 2022.
Great.
Yes, but let's kind of take a step back. Daryl, I see your super chat, and we're going to get there in a minute because that's a topic that we're going to talk about is that position. So we'll get to that in a minute. So stick with us. But I want to go back to, when we're talking about Jay's question, I did mention, getting in some pass rush to help out the secondary. So that leads us into better or worse, the 49ers secondary. Kind of what are your thoughts on that? Because this is definitely one where I don't think we can say they're the same. So
I think they're worse.
What are your thoughts? Okay.
Only because of safety. I think they improved on the corner by bringing in Jarius Ward, and I really like Emmanuel Mosley. But we lost our slot corner, so I don't know what we're doing at slot. I don't know if it's going to be, not Ambry Thomas, but Diamondor Lenore. That's unproven. We don't know. And then Jaquiski Tartt, you say what you want about him and the injuries and him not playing regularly, but he's been a pretty solid piece back there for a long time. Him and Ward have, for the most part, held it down and done a damn good job doing it. So, they got the safety via the Colts in the in free agency on special teams. I'm not really sold that he's. I heard another person, a content creator, was like, if that's your replacement in that position, he goes, that's not a good look. So who knows? I mean, Tart hasn't gotten much action on the free agent market, I don't think. As he didn't last year either, I don't think. So we'll see. I mean, if they can bring back Jaquiski Tartt, or they make a move on Tyrann Mathieu, which I know is not going to happen. But right now I would say they're worse only because there's some question marks, We don't know slot and safety if what's replacing what.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the piece that's hard, is because I think when you look at that group, I think they're better at cornerback. So that's a plus. At safety, I don't, Jaquiski Tartt is a really good player, and it's hard to say that they're better without Jaquiski Tartt. The only thing that slows me down a little bit is that Jaquiski Tartt is injured so often. We don't know if he's going to be healthy, and that kind of thing. And he is a guy that could kind of maybe fall to the 49ers, right? He might come back. The market right now on safeties is really slow. I think part of the reason the market at safety is so slow is because that's a really deep position in the draft. And so teams are kind of waiting to find out how that position plays out before they go out and grab that safety. Can the 49ers get him to come back? If the 49ers can get Jaquiski Tartt back, that's a big plus.
Yeah.
Maybe if they're able to get a guy, I don't know, does Jalen Petrie fall in the draft that far down to him? Probably not. But I mean, again, that's a position right now. So right now we talk about secondary. I kind of agree with you. It's worse because of that. The slot piece is interesting because you have the options there are to slide
Emmanuel Mosley inside a little bit. It's to put Dante Johnson in there a little bit. It's to put maybe Darquez Denard in there a little bit. There's all
Forgot about
kinds of
him.
there's a lot of, they have, the one thing that the 49ers do really well, because we're at the end of their main position groups, we have quarterback left over. But at this point, what I'll say is, one thing that the 49ers do a really good job of year after year is they do a good job of putting together a pretty solid team pre-draft, so that it opens them up to where they want to go in the draft. They don't have very many absolute big time needs that they have to fill.
Right.
I would say right now that their biggest need probably to fill would be safety, as far as a guy that would have to play right away, and possibly would be safety. The next biggest need that they have is to get a center that they can develop, that can take over next year.
Yep.
And then you can kind of go off from there. Defensive end could be one, but the secondary piece, I'll go ahead and say that they're worse. I feel like that has a potential to be a same as well, maybe even better, because you're getting better play at the corner. But if you can solve your safety issue opposite of Jim Ward, then it could be even a better, right?
Right. I think too with a lot of people are predicting, at least myself, and I was talking to I was in a stream yesterday with Kelton, Bay Area baller. I said, why do I have a feeling that everybody's saying the Niners are going to get either they're going to get edge at that position, or they might take an offensive lineman. Part of me thinks that pick in the second round is going to end up being a safety, and we're going to be all like, just because it's a need, and from what all the reports are, it's a decent safety class this year. So I don't know. I mean, I would love edge at that position at that pick, but safety, if it's not addressed and we don't bring back Tart, and we don't bring in Tyrann Mathieu, which I keep talking about because I think that would be huge. But that's definitely, right now I think that they're worse, but who knows? Maybe they go safety in the second round, and then that's all taken care of. So we'll see.
Yeah. So that is the position to keep a look at. And then real quick, I'm going to answer this question. Swan asked, how would Dante Johnson be at strong safety? Well, here's the thing. And this is part of why I have it's hard to look at this team and know quite where they go. And this is a small sample size, right? It's only the half of a game. But in the second half of the week 18 game, that's what Dante Johnson played. He played safety. I don't know if he was playing strong safety or free safety, but he was playing safety opposite of Jimmy Ward. Darquez Denard was the guy that played the slot in that game for the 49ers in the second half. Dante Johnson started in the slot and slid back to strong safety. So, when you look at this secondary group right now as it stands for the 49ers, they have a lot of flexibility within that. Can they even use Travarius Ward in the slot? Are they going to become a team this year that's going to maybe match up a little bit more often with receivers than they've done in the past? Because really what we've seen them do is play one side or the other. They're either a left corner or a right corner, and the only guy that moves around is the slot. So is this a season in which we see them start to maybe do a little bit more matchup? Are they going to start playing a little bit more man coverage? I think the addition of Travarius Ward, going into last season, we felt like the 49ers were going to be more of a man team. And then they lost Jason Verrett week 1, and we saw that kind of go away, and they became more of a zone team because they had to be, because they had young guys on the corners that weren't very good, and they had veterans on the corner that were even worse than the young guys outside of, when Mosley was playing. So, I think when you look at this team this year, the Travarius Ward edition, I think if you have a Travarius Ward is going to be looked at as the guy that can lock down a side of the field. Emmanuel Mosley is a guy that can play pretty strong man coverage.
Yep.
Ambry Thomas is a guy that can play pretty strong if you put him in man coverage. I think if you really start to get him a little bit more comfortable in his role. The safety is a fascinating group to me. I think they have a potential to be really good. I don't see them dropping off quite as much if they can get that safety spot figured out opposite of Ward.
Yeah, and the thing about Ambry Thomas too is a lot of people were saying last year that one of his biggest issues is he just needed to get stronger. He was in a lot of positions a lot of times to make plays, and guys outworked him or out physicaled him on point of point of, catch point on the catch point with the ball. So him being active in the weight room and getting himself and being healthy in camp, I think is gonna work out well for him. And who knows? You're right. Maybe he becomes that either the other outside corner and pushes Emmanuel Mosley into the slot, or they put him as the new slot guy. And you're right. If Javarius Ward can be that lockdown guy that a lot of people think he's going to be, who knows? This Niners secondary, but all of a sudden become kind of sticky, and then you add the rush, and who knows? Maybe they improve as a defense and they get that 2019 vibe back, and then we're all sitting pretty in next February. Who knows?
Yeah, no, who knows exactly? I mean, it's kind of crazy the way that all works out. And then that's real quick before we get into the last topic, just because I do see there's a new super chat that I want to. Don't worry, I'm going to get to the one from earlier. Where was I? Sorry, I'm lost. Okay.
I know.
There we go.
It's crazy.
Jay Aguayo, thank you again for your donation. He says at Jack, if Tart comes back, we are worse. We could draft a safety like Brian Cook from Cincinnati or Lewis Klein from Georgia. Pretty deep draft class. Again, that's a good point as well. I think Brian Cook is a name. Brian Cook is a name that I threw out pre-combine to watch for the 49ers. So I'm with you there, Jay. And then as far as, I don't know about, here's the thing with Tart is when the 49ers had Tart and Ward back there, they were pretty strong last year. So that's the only reason why I say that. But a guy like Cook could be a young guy who's cheap and can fill that role for multiple years, and then we're not doing this back and forth with Tart. So I get it from that standpoint for sure, and I do like Brian Cook.
Definitely.
All right. So let's jump on to our last topic, which is better or worse, quarterback. And so once I bring up the quarterback position, I do want to finally bring up Daryl's question. Thank you, Daryl, for asking this question earlier. Hopefully you stayed on with us. I hope you did with the $10 donation. You said, if Jimmy Garoppolo is still here in training camp, we find a way to trade or cut him, then decide to get his thumb surgery before that happens. What then? So you're going. So Daryl, you're going a little 49er QAnon with the last piece of it, right? But kind of just throwing out a conspiracy theory, which is fine. That would be a big time screw job for the 49ers, right? I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know if it does. Then the 49ers would definitely be screwed out of $7.5 million. That's what they would be. That's what they'd be out of if that was the case.
Yeah, I think with Jimmy Garoppolo, you touched on it a lot about, there's a lot of confusion about what they actually can get out of him if they move on from him later, and the rollover and the cap and everything. I was a lot more in the mindset of just get rid of him, like everybody else. But then when you start to kind of break it down on a financial standpoint of what they could roll over in next year, depending on when they get rid of him, hell, stay till freaking June. I don't care. Just leave when it's time. Like, go away. Because I think to be honest with you, if you ask if they've improved at quarterback, I think they have. Just from an athletic standpoint, from a youth standpoint, hopefully from a health standpoint, I'm high on Trey Lance because I think Trey Lance, for what he did show us last year, he showed the ability to get better and make adjustments. Plus, he's in a really good position with a really good coach, and Kyle's going to put him in a position around him with players that can make it easy for him. He's pretty much just got to be the facilitator like Jimmy. And then once he figures it all out, man, he could be really scary because the way I look at it is I think he will have a slow start. I really do think he's going to have a slow start next year just because Kyle and him are going to have like a feeling out point. I honestly think because it's going to be him and Kyle. And I feel like if he can kind of get past that initial like bump and they start to figure out what he does best and what he struggles at, and then you add all the pieces that are already around him, I think this quarterback room or this quarterback position is going to look like something we haven't seen in a long time. So I'm saying better. Oh, Big Jack froze. No. Oh, we lost Jack, guys. He'll be back shortly. Hold on one second. Thank you very much. We'll just wait for Jack for a minute, guys. Do you guys want to see Jimmy here by June, or do you want him cut right now? Let me know. Jack has a financial swerve on that whole situation that really makes it smart for the Niners to keep him till I think June. So because they can roll that money over into 2022 or 2023 and have like $50 million in cap space. So we'll see. Oh, did we lose Jack? Jack says, keep talking. All right. So what's everybody having for dinner tonight? Who's eating what? Who's having, what is everybody having for dinner? Too many people checking their email on McDonald's Wi-Fi. That's funny. Trey Lance fixing to light the scene up. He isn't going to throw much. What's that? Oh, that's right. I can't click on the topics. Yeah, I'd like to see Trey Lance can be the type of guy who can do things in the intermediate well, because that's kind of where he struggled last year. Where Jimmy's really good is Jimmy's really good in the underneath and intermediate stuff, and that's kind of where Trey was lacking last year. To see if he can make that improvement. Hey, he's back.
I'm back. See my McDonald's Wi-Fi. They found out that I was using it, and they decided that they were going to kick me off. I had to go give the guy a couple bucks to let me back on.
Nice.
But you were discussing why you feel like it's a plus, correct? For the
yeah. And I told them that one of the guys in the chat. I told him, I said it would be a smart to keep him till June. You shared something, I don't know where I seen it, where you kind of broke down the financials of keeping Jimmy till June, and there was kind of a representation of the actual facts of like him staying. If they would have cut him last year, the Niners would have had said $50 million or whatever, and that actually was false, and it actually applies to this coming like June or something.
Yeah, well, I was a little right and a little wrong on that. The thought there was that the people were saying that if the 49ers had cut Garoppolo last year, what people were saying is the 49ers should have moved on from him because the 49ers would have an extra $50 million in cap space right now. That is actually correct. If they had cut him last year and not done anything else, right? If they had just cut him, say like after the draft and just stopped at that point, then that's potentially correct. That isn't what likely wouldn't have been the case, but it could have been. And so I was a little bit wrong because when you start to run the numbers, they would have carried over 25 million. Garoppolo's cap hit wouldn't be that 25 million of Garoppolo's cap, 27 million that is on the books right now for Garoppolo. That would be gone already. So when you start the way that it works, they would have had the 50 million or some portion of that. But you can think of that in the same way this year. So when you hear people talk about the 49ers need to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo and that money is earmarked for George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, I'm of the mind to say that it's not, because the money that's going to go to those players in year one isn't going to be nearly what Jimmy Garoppolo's 25 million. But at the same time, where it is earmarked is because they could roll that $25 million over into next year, and that's going to continue to build and it explodes through. So, it could be a situation where maybe what the 49ers decide to do is take on more cap hit in either this year, once those deals get done and they move on from Garoppolo, they kind of front load those deals to allow them to do some other things next year, or they roll it over into other players' deals. So
would they front loaded with cap or with guarantees?
Cap.
Okay.
Cap. So because the way that when you're you buy down the cap hit by doing a lower base salary, right? But you're always going to have to fill it in down the road. You might have like this to say like you give a guy a third. If you give the guy a $30 million signing bonus, that signing bonus can only be spread out over 5 years. So that automatically means that their cap hits $6 million, right? Let's just do it super simple. We're going to do $100 million contract for 5 years. Okay. And the only bonus money you get is your signing bonus. Let's just do it super simple. And the signing bonus is 30 mil, right? So if I were to break that up in year one, I have to pay you at least your cap hit is going to be at least $6 million because that signing bonus can only be spread out over 5 years. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. So and then from there, the next piece is the minimum salary that you can have as a veteran. Let's just say it's $1 million or something like that. So that means the lowest your cap hit could be in year one is going to be 7 mil. But if that 100 million, that means next year I got to start building that up on the back end, right? And that's one of the things the 49ers actually do a pretty good job of, and that's why they have cap flexibility that they have with some of their bigger players, is because they give them a modest signing bonus with big guaranteed salaries. But in the positive piece of doing that is that having a big gap between your salary and your signing bonus, that allows you to now pull that salary out and start using and then kind of redo the deal as like more signing bonus. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so that's why, like, when I look at their future contracts and I'm seeing Fred Warner next year. Fred Warner is a guy that could be restructured next year if the 49ers decide to, because he has a big base salary and a small signing. He has a big bonus compared to what his has a big base salary compared to what his.
So they can convert in the years that the salary cap is able to be on the book, or the guarantee, the signing bonus is able to be on the books. They can always convert. They can convert the contract, like the actual contract, into signing bonus in those years.
Correct.
That's interesting. I never knew that.
Your base salary is what you can convert into bonus money, right? You can't really, but the bonus money is because the bonus money is your guarantee, right? There's also some guaranteed base and that kind of stuff, but you can kind of play around with that number. If you tell that guy, I'm guaranteeing you're going to get $20 million in X year based off of these numbers, you can still fudge around with the base pay. Which is
I'm really bad at math, so I'm just like, what?
Yeah, no, you can get into the weeds super fast with all this stuff. I really would say if you have questions on the salary cap that you're not sure of, follow 49ers Cap on Twitter. He does a really good job. Jason does a really good job over there. When I threw that out the other day, as far as the money that you're bringing up, had a lot of people telling me that I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And the more that I thought about it, the more that I kind of was starting to agree with them. And so I sent that back. I sent that out to him. I said, hey, I'm wrong here, right? And he kind of said yes and no. I was wrong, but not completely wrong. And, I know why.
You and Jesse were going back and forth on that one.
Well, Jesse and I were going back and forth on that. We were going back and forth on the media stuff. That's where we were arguing about.
And I agree with them. I did agree with them a little bit. It's what it is. I'm an East Coaster, so I'm a New Yorker. They're freaking brutal over here. Same thing in Philly. I do think the West Coast, they're a little bit more lax. Grant is kind of the anomaly where he'll ask that question that'll piss people off. His father was the same way. So sometimes you just want that one person that might kind of like ask why, because. Yeah, John Lynch has a way of kind of like finessing the media with how he is, and nobody really questions it sometimes. And I'm not saying that you have to be a tool and be like a prick and be a certain way towards the media or towards the team, but sometimes I'd like to hear a little bit more pushback, I guess.
Yeah. When I go back and I look. So real quick, let's just end the quarterback conversation by saying that they're going to be better because they have Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. We know that, right? I think we both agree on that one. And and Trey Lance is going to determine where the 49ers finish.
Yeah.
I really feel like if you took Trey Lance and you put him on the 49ers in that NFC Championship game, the expectation is that they win that game because of the throws that he can make that Jimmy doesn't make. I think what I saw out of him in week 17 of last year made me feel really comfortable moving forward without Jimmy Garoppolo at that position. And we heard that as well from Kyle Shanahan as to why they're looking to move on from Jimmy.
I feel like if he can, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I feel like if he can kind of master that, what Jimmy did well. Jimmy was really good in the intermediate game, his accuracy and just his ability to kind of like, get the plays in and out of the huddle, do that kind of stuff. I feel like once Trey masters that part of his game is when he'll really ascend. Because he does a lot of the off-script stuff really good. He's got the deep arm. He's able to hit quadrants of the field that the Niners, just can't do with Jimmy. But, he has a little bit of that long, elongated throwing motion that sometimes lends itself to inaccuracy. So if he can somehow work on that, and that's what he's doing in the offseason, it'll be interesting to see. Because I feel like that's his biggest hang-up, other than lack of experience, is just that intermediate, the short stuff, where he just needs to clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that he has the ability to get. He has the ability to hit all the areas. There were some throws that he made there in week 17 that I hadn't quite seen from him on film from North Dakota State and stuff like that. So that's where I got excited. There were some good anticipation throws too. The throw to Brandon Ayuk at the end of the second quarter, right before halftime. That was a beauty. It had been wide open earlier in the game, and they came back to it. And the second time around, he didn't miss it. And then the fact that he took those shots down the field really opened up the offense in a way that we haven't seen.
Yeah, because teams you have to respect it as a defense.
Yeah,
But Jimmy, you don't even think about it.
Well, and the other thing too is it doesn't even have to be a completion, right? I mean,
right.
Then that sounds crazy. It's kind of a goofy thing for me to say, but it doesn't have to be a completion. Just the threat of the ball down the field, like the deep ball that he threw to Brandon Ayuk. It's a pass interference. It doesn't go down as a completion, but it was a 40-yard play for the 49ers that set up a touchdown. So that's something that we didn't really get out of Jimmy Garoppolo. We didn't get those 50-50 balls that were thrown down the field that force a defender to make a play. And we're going to see more of that, I think, with Trey Lance as he continues to get more comfortable in this offense. And then moving off of the quarterbacks, as far as the media piece, my disagreement the disagreement that I had that you were referring to had more to do with I'm trying not to be a 49ers on the 49ers here, but the comment was, it started off with a tweet about the 49ers being soft when it came to the media, and that you were going to see an exclusive. The only thing you were going to see out of them during the owners' meeting was going to come from Matt Mayoko or Jennifer Lee Chan, because they're in the 49ers pocket, because they work at NBC Sports Bay Area, and they're partners with the 49ers. I understand that the partner piece. But the only thing, my whole point there was just that it was wrong. It just, I understand like that thought, but the owners' meetings are open to everybody. I could have been there. I just don't have the money to fly out to Florida. Right.
I definitely understand both sides of it. I can see that could have been something that they could have done, because they have done that before to get in front of a story, maybe.
Sure. But in this case, when he was in this case and talking about the owners' meetings, it was an incorrect statement. So that's why I was correcting it. and then you get into Monday and Tuesday, and you can say whatever you want about them. I don't think the questions were any better on Tuesday than they were on Monday. I don't. I feel the difference between the two was the guy that was responding to them. Kyle Shanahan in his press conferences is usually very broad in his answers. He gives you long answers that go in a lot of different directions. And I think part of the reason he does is because he's trying to answer your question in so many different ways. He's like kind of trying to answer your question. He's trying not to answer your question. He's trying to not give you anything. And because he's not trying to give you anything, he kind of gives you something over here, and it just becomes this long, whiny thing. And you kind of have to read between the lines and all that kind of stuff. The way that I saw the press conferences between Lynch and Shanahan were the same. I walked away from John Lynch's, what I heard and saw of John Lynch, that it was telling us that this is Trey Lance's team and it's Trey Lance's job to lose at quarterback. That's why I wrote the article on Monday, and then we came back on Tuesday and we heard what Kyle Shanahan had to say, and really all Kyle Shanahan did was maybe take it a little bit of a step further. He really just kind of hammered home the fact that was the case. That was the direction that they were leaning towards, while at the same time saying that they'd be fine keeping Garoppolo and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. It's a you can have some back and forth. You can keep asking the questions. I think you just got to know. You got to realize who you're talking to, and you're going to get more out of the head coach than the general manager, especially at this time of the year.
Yeah, John Lynch has a way of really not saying anything most of the times. And you're right, Kyle does. Sometimes he does a lot of umming and ahhing, but he will divulge sometimes. Especially, after games or something, he's quick to pretty much be as honest as you possibly could be about what he thought is the reason why we lost or something. He's not one of those coaches that always takes it as it being his fault. Sometimes he'll put it out there that if the player just made the play, that we wouldn't have this situation. And a lot of people don't like hearing that, but at least he's being honest. So,
yeah. And I mean, I don't know. It's a whole interesting dynamic, the way that some people decided to go after the 49ers media this week. I mean, what's different right now between what we dealt with last year? Really? I mean, is the team all of a sudden going to come out and tell you who the starting quarterback is? Are they going to all of a sudden start being what NFL team, if you ask them a question right now, is going to come out and just give you everything?
They're not, because they don't know. Things change between now and training camp. Someone could get injured, get in a car accident, get hurt, and then they have to completely change everything. You're right. It's to show you all your cards now this time of year would be foolhardy. So I understand both. Like I said, I understand both sides of it, because I remember responding it, and you were like, "Why he's not 100% correct?" And I was just like, "Oh." I was like, jackhammer got me too. Damn. I was like, ouch. Because I was just trying to because I forget sometimes that you follow me and Jesse does too. So I was like, yeah, Jesse, yeah, you tell him. And then all of a sudden I saw your comment. I'm like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
And I don't always have as much firepower as Jesse to come back at you. I love both you guys.
Okay. Well, there's nothing for him to come back at me at, though, because it was open, right?
Right.
And the only way that I could come back at him was to go through Twitter and find out who was going. Most of the reporters weren't putting out pictures, so I didn't know if I knew Mayoko and Jennifer Lee Chan would be out there. I wasn't sure if Matt Barrows was going to be out there. I figured he probably would be, and all the other Cam Inman and Eric Branch and I don't know if Chris Biederman was out there or not. And I figured that all those guys were going to be out there, because that's what they do. That's their job. 100%. That's what they do, is cover the team. And I cover the team as well, but I don't get paid to cover the team like they get paid to cover the team, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I agree.
I would have had to pay my own way. And
that's crazy.
I just don't have the money to make that payment at this time.
I feel you. I definitely don't, even if I did cover a team's.
Yeah,
YouTube doesn't quite pay the bills for that.
That's the goal, right? That's my goal, is to be able to get to the point where I can go to all the games. I can go to all these events, so that I can fully cover the team like everybody else does.
Right.
So that's where the channel comes in, because this is really kind of the biggest avenue that I have at this moment to increase the amount of money that I get for what I do.
Right.
On
No,
this
I
site.
completely agree. And I'm just a YouTuber per se, but yeah, I watch when I want to hear, like, when I want to know stuff, there are certain people that I watch. You're definitely one of them. I like to watch Jason, watch Rob, I'll watch Jesse. They're like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot,
There's
some,
there's a
go
lot of
ahead.
good guys. I was
Yeah.
gonna say there's a lot of really good guys.
Yeah, it's just a lot of good, like, I could switch to any one of those channels and get pretty damn accurate information. I think just some of us we're just animated more. There's people that are just fans that, like I said, I'm a New Yorker, so I'm like very hard to please. And I can be kind of prickish and prickly. If I was a reporter and I thought that I was getting the freaking, like, the side eye, or they weren't answering my question, I would probably be the guy that'd be thrown out of the room, because you'd ask the question why. And they don't like that very much. So, I understand there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's people that are really finesse, like Mayoka and Barrows are really good. Jennifer Lee Chan's really good. But yeah, then there's Grant, who just doesn't give a freaking damn, and I love it too. So I've tweeted him one time, like, please ask this question to them because I'm pissed off. And he liked the tweet. I don't know if he answered the question, whatever it was, but I was like, because I know Grant would have the stones to freaking do it, and not care what the repercussions would be. So it's funny.
Yeah, and that's it. Before last year, when I finally got the access and became credentialed to go and do that, I would do the same thing you do. I would well, instead of sending it as a tweet, I'd usually maybe do it as a DM or something like that. But I would shoot out questions to say, hey, why did they do this? Like, maybe ask why they did this, or why, whatever. It's good to have that kind of access and have somebody that's willing to throw those questions out there every once in a while.
Definitely. So
it's the one thing that I'll say about the press conference piece. I've got to get better at it. I've got to get better at being at the uncomfortability of sitting in that room and asking the question. The hard part about it is that you have there's 20 people in that room, and everybody's got a lot of folks have their questions that they got to get off. And the one piece that is hard is to get the question out. And it's not because you're afraid to ask the question. Sometimes it's because you've got to almost be ready to, like, as soon as you got to feel comfortable cutting people off. I think that's probably my biggest thing, is that if somebody starts talking, or if I start to say something but somebody's talking over me, I have a hard time by kind of talking over them to be the one that gets the question out.
I would have that problem too.
Yeah, so there's some growth that I've got to work on in that. So keep an eye out for me. I had some good questions. I felt I had some pretty good questions last year during training camp.
I'll definitely keep an eye out for you, bro. Definitely. I support it 100%. All you guys that are freaking hustling and grinding, man, I support you guys 100%.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of work. Like I tell, I'm not doing. I do 49er coverage as much as I can. Try to write on a daily basis, and I will say this: my day starts at 6:00, usually wraps up around 10, because I have another job that I have to go to, which is the one that actually pays all the bills. My writing piece pays for some of them. Pays for some of the stuff, and that's good, like the travel and the stuff like that I'm hoping to do, and whatever. But the goal is to make it a full-time deal. But I start at 6 and at 10. I have 3 kids, so they're not always with me, but they've been with me for about a month and a half now straight, and so those are long days, and you don't do this if you don't love what you're doing. And
that's right.
Like I was telling Rob last week at the end of our show, it's because we were talking about our time with the 49ers as fans. And so it's not lost on me that I get to be in that room. There's other people that don't get to be. So I appreciate the support and everything. And I also understand people that might say some things to me that aren't always thought of as nice, but it's okay. When you have opinions and you share opinions, not everybody's going to like them, and that's okay.
Exactly. If you can say your opinion and the other person can say theirs, and you can be respectful to each other as human beings and disagree at the same time, that's where you're good. It's the people that take stuff into a different direction or attack you personally. Then it's like, okay, You know what I mean? So definitely, I agree with you.
Yep. And that's where I start to get a little frustrated. Andrew, come on now. I'm not going to burn myself out. We're talking about football.
Yeah, we're talking about football here.
We're not talking about work. We're not talking about stress. We're talking about football. Nah, I'm trying to do my best Allen Iverson imitation.
I knew where you were going with that.
But I will say that I do understand when you say not to burn yourself out, because I can understand how you can do that. But that's where I got guys like Aaron who get me through a show where I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say today, and I got a guy like Aaron who can bring some good takes to me, because again, 49er first takes, obviously, right? Yeah, and he can help me out. Or when I work with Jesse and we do hammer and nail show, he helps me out. When I work with Rob, Rob's a super easy guy to work with, because he knows he knows his stuff, and I'm really fortunate to have all the group of people that I've talked to. I met you this year, just recently, of the last few months, which is awesome,
Yep.
Aaron, and trying to kind of spread myself out a little bit too, in terms of my the people that I talk to on this show. So
it means a lot to me to have me on, because I consider you kind of one of those GOAT guys, because you cover the team, and you're more connected than, say, just a YouTuber like myself. And if you would have told me almost 3 years ago that, I would have started a YouTube channel where I just wanted to talk about the Niners, and I always, if I could have gone to school, if I was younger now, I would have went to school for communications and all that media stuff, and that would have been my job. But if I'm doing this as a passion thing, and I've been able to interact with you and Jesse and Jason and Rob and all these other people that are actually connected to the team in some form or fashion, freaking unbelievably grateful. So I was like, whoa, Jack Hammer's asking me to come on his channel? Sweet. It's great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to, and I'm not sure, what are some of the things that you've got coming up on your channel?
Right now, not a whole hell of a lot, to be honest with you. It's been quiet. I've been doing more collabing. I like to collab in the off season. So more or less, if I could, I'm talking with Celts Chronicles right now to do something on a regular basis. Maybe him and Bay Area Baller, maybe like a day where we all get together. I try to do it with Rob, and Rob's pretty stacked with stuff. And the one day I wanted to do it, Rob's like, oh, that's kind of my day that I want to relax. I'm like, I got you. It's cool. Like, during the season, I'll do like post-game stuff, or I'll do quick little videos. But in the off season, I really like to collab, because I think it makes the show go better. And, there's not always much to talk about. So if you kind of bounce between 2, maybe 3 people, it kind of, it feels more full, it's not as thinned out if it's just one person. So the channel right now is I report like whatever news that's breaking, which for a while was a good amount of stuff. It's been a little quiet lately. And then, like I said, as we get closer to the draft and free agency, if there's any news or moves, or the Niners are thinking about, trading up or whatever, I don't know. That's what I try to do. So it's more or less breaking news and collaborations and stuff.
There you go. So make sure you get over to 49ers First Takes. If you're not already subscribed, get over there and check it out, and make sure you subscribe to Aaron's channel and get locked in, because Barry Baller's a lot of fun to talk to. Rich from Celts Chronicles is a lot of fun to talk to. I had him on the channel on Wednesday. So
really well-spoken young man.
Yep. Very, very good. So get over there, support these guys. And then really quick, before you leave, I want to say thanks to Aaron for joining. Thanks to all of you in the comment section. You guys were a good group today. I really appreciate that. If you could just do me a favor, like it says at the top of the screen, like, subscribe, and then also hit that little bell notification, so that, every time we go live, that'd be fantastic. I will be back for sure on Monday with Rob for the Hammerhead show. Keep it locked in on the channel, though. If you're not following me, you want to subscribe. And here's one of the reasons you want to subscribe. I've gotten a lot better at making sure that I get into that community tab and filling that out. So keep an eye out. I might be jumping on tomorrow to do a call-in show, kind of late morning, early afternoon. So we'll see where it goes. If it's not tomorrow, then maybe it'll be Sunday. I'm not sure. But for sure, 100% I can tell you that I will be back on Monday with Rob for the Hammerhead show. Otherwise, like, subscribe, get over to Aaron's channel. Thank you all so much again. Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your Friday. Take care, everybody.